Sarah Foster wiped the fogged window of the pages of the past bookstore and looked out onto the main street of Pine Hollow. It was a typical Tuesday morning, the few passers-by scurrying about their business, sheltering from the drizzling rain. On days like this, the town seemed especially small and cozy, as if frozen in time. 17 years ago, when she had first come here to follow her dreams of a quiet life away from Portland, the atmosphere had enchanted her. Now, at 38, she sometimes felt that Pine Hollow was suffocating her with its permanence. The bell above the door jingled, and Mrs. Jenkins entered the store as usual at 10 o'clock sharp in the morning. "Good morning, Sarah, dear. Has my new detective arrived?" Sarah smiled. Some things never changed, and there was something comforting about that. "Yes, just got it yesterday. I put it aside for you." Sarah pulled a book from under the counter. "You'll like it, I'm sure." After the customer left, Sarah went back to organizing the new arrivals. Her thoughts returned to Michael. For the past few months, she had felt that something had changed between them. They had been married for 12 years. Michael, with his freckled face and unruly red hair, seemed to have found his place in life, working as a mechanic in the town's only auto repair shop. He'd always been taciturn, preferring action to talk, and Sarah had learned to read his moods by the small habits of tapping his fingers on the table when he was agitated, or whistling softly when he felt content. But lately, new habits had emerged that she couldn't decipher. Michael had started traveling to nearby Oak Ridge more often, explaining it with orders for complicated repairs. Sarah had never doubted his word after all. There wasn't much work for an auto mechanic in Pine Hollow with a population of 2,000. Still, something was bothering her. Especially those phone calls he answered when he left the room, and the strange expression on his face when he returned, as if he'd put on a mask of calm. "You're getting paranoid," she told herself. Still, the doubts gnawed at her like termite wood. On Wednesday, Sarah decided to drive to the Fresh Mart supermarket in Oak Ridge. There was only a small grocery store in Pine Hollow where the selection was limited and the prices high. Once a month, she allowed herself this small luxury of spending a couple hours picking out groceries that couldn't be found at home. She rolled the cart slowly down the rows, enjoying the bright colors of the fruits and vegetables. It was at that moment that she saw him, a red hair that was unrecognizable. Michael was standing in the frozen food department, his back to her. What a coincidence, Sarah thought, and was about to call out to her husband when she saw that he wasn't alone. Standing next to him was a woman. A petite blonde in a blue dress was saying something, leaning over the frozen vegetables. Michael listened to her with a smile that Sarah hadn't seen in a very long time, attentive, full of warmth. But what made Sarah's heart skip a beat was the small figure beside them, a girl about 6 years old, with the same red hair as Michael's, tugging at his sleeve, pointing at the ice cream. Sarah froze, instinctively retreating behind the rack of canned goods. Her throat was dry, and the hands gripping the handle of the cart were ice cold. 100 thoughts flashed through my mind. Could it be just acquaintances, colleagues from Oak Ridge? But then why had he never mentioned them? And why did the girl look so much like him? As if in a trance, Sarah watched as Michael picked up a bag of frozen peas, put them in the cart, and then easily lifted the girl into his arms, allowing her to choose her ice cream. The woman beside him smiled warmly, and Michael leaned over and kissed her. Not the formal kiss that acquaintances exchanged, but a real intimate gesture, full of tenderness. The world around Sarah seemed to freeze. The colors faded, the sounds became muffled. She was vaguely aware that she had to get away, to hide before they saw her, but her feet felt like they were stuck to the floor. It wasn't until the trio moved on to the next row that Sarah woke up and left the store on shaky legs, leaving the full cart in the middle of the aisle. The next few days passed like a blur. Sarah went to work, talked to customers, cooked dinner, all on autopilot. A hurricane of emotions raged inside her, but outwardly she remained calm. She didn't tell Michael what she'd seen. Something kept her from a direct confrontation. Maybe fear of hearing the truth, or the hope that it was all some ridiculous misunderstanding. Instead, Sarah began her own investigation. On Friday, when Michael supposedly left for Oak Ridge for the day to work on a rare European car, she took the day off and followed him. Michael didn't go to the auto shop. Instead, he stopped in front of a small pale blue house on the outskirts of Oak Ridge. Sarah, parked a block away, watched as Michael pulled bags of groceries out of the trunk and entered the house using the key, as if it were his home. Sarah sat in the car for 3 hours. During that time, she saw the same blonde woman come home with the girl. They entered the house without knocking. Through the windows, Sarah saw all 3 of them sitting at the dining room table, laughing, talking. A perfect family scene. Only it wasn't her family, not her home, not her life. In that moment, Sarah realized she'd lived the last few years in a lie. The only question was how deep the roots of that lie went. Back in Pine Hollow, the first thing she did was call Emma Harris, her best friend since high school days. Emma, a redhead like Michael, but with a completely different personality, loud, outspoken, always ready to speak her mind, owned the local hair salon, Cut and Gossip. If anyone could give advice in a situation like this, it was Emma. They met after the salon closed. Sarah, swallowing back tears, recounted everything she had learned. Emma listened in silence, which was uncharacteristic of her, only occasionally shaking her head. "Are you sure?" she asked at last. "Could it be his sister or cousin?" "Michael doesn't have a sister, you know that. And that girl, Emma, she looks just like him. And he kissed that woman, not as a relative." Emma took a deep breath. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know," Sarah answered honestly. "Part of me wants to just ask him directly. The other part is afraid to hear the answer." "Listen," Emma took her hands in hers. "You have to be careful. Men, when backed into a corner, can be unpredictable, especially quiet ones like Michael. It's always the ones you don't expect that turn out to be capable of the worst behaviors." Sarah remembered what Emma had said from experience. Her first husband, who had seemed like a quiet intellectual, had turned out to be a domestic tyrant, and the divorce had been a nightmare. "I just want to know the truth," Sarah said. "How long has this been going on? Who is this woman? And that girl? God, Emma, she's about 6 years old." "You have to prepare," Emma said. "Gather more information. Find out what you can expect in a divorce. And most importantly, don't jump to conclusions. Talk to him, but when you're ready." Sarah wasn't ready, but life rarely waits for us to be ready for its blows. Saturday night, as she and Michael were eating dinner, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and, after muttering an apology, left the room. Sarah could hear his quiet voice from the hallway, though she couldn't make out the words. When he returned, his face was tense. "I have to go to Oak Ridge tomorrow," he said, avoiding her gaze. "All day." Something in Sarah snapped. Maybe it was the cumulative pain of the last few days, maybe the fatigue of pretending, but she couldn't stay silent any longer. "To your other family?" she asked quietly. Michael froze. His face, usually tanned from working outdoors, had gone pale. "What did you say?" "I saw you, Michael, Wednesday at Fresh Mart, with that blonde and the girl. Your daughter, I presume." Michael sat up, or rather almost collapsed in his chair. His hands, always confident and strong, were trembling now. "Sarah, I can explain." "Really?" Sarah was surprised at her own calmness. "Then explain. Explain why my husband is living a double life. Explain why you have a child I didn't know about. Explain why you've been lying to my face every single day for the last few years." "It's not what you think," Michael began, but his voice sounded unconvincing even to himself. "What am I supposed to think? I've been watching you. I saw you walk into that house, how you have dinner together. I saw you kiss her. What else could it be, Michael?" He opened and closed his mouth like a fish that had been thrown ashore, then ran his hand through his hair, a gesture Sarah knew so well. He always did that when he was cornered. "It's complicated," he finally said. "I think it's pretty simple," Sarah replied. "You're living on 2 families. How long has that been going on? And how many other secrets are you keeping?" "Sarah, please," he said, panic in his voice. "Let's talk calmly. I can explain. It's just not now. I need time." "Time?" Sarah laughed bitterly. "Time for what? To come up with new lies? Or to decide which one of us you'd rather leave?" Michael pounded his fist on the table and the dishes bounced. "You don't understand!" he almost shouted. "It's not that simple." Sarah had never seen him like this before. red with anger, with veins protruding in his neck. This Michael was a stranger to her, nor, it turned out, was the man she'd lived with for 12 years. "Then explain it to me," she said quietly. "Who is that woman? Who is that girl?" Michael lowered his head. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. "Her name is Lauren Bennett. And the girl, her name is Amanda. She's 6 years old." "She's your daughter?" The long silence was more eloquent than any answer. "How long has this been going on?" "Sarah." "How long, Michael?" He looked up at her, eyes full of a strange mixture of guilt and defiance. 8 years, a little longer, 8 years. Their life together had been a lie, 8 years. "Get out," Sarah said. "Now. I don't want to see you. Sarah, please, let's talk." "Get out!" she shouted, jumping up. "Or I'll call the sheriff and tell him how you've been hiding your income all these years. I'm sure the IRS will be thrilled." It was an empty threat. Sarah had no idea if Michael paid taxes on his part-time job in Oak Ridge or not, but it had worked. He turned even paler, grabbed his jacket and car keys. At the door, he stopped. "I love you, Sarah. I always have. It's true." She didn't answer. When the door closed behind him, Sarah sank to the floor and burst into tears. Her whole world, which had seemed so solid just a few days ago, was now crumbling like a house of cards. Sunday morning greeted Sarah Foster with the monotonous pounding of rain on the roof. She lay in bed, staring at the empty space beside her where Michael usually slept. The red numbers on the alarm clock showed 7:30, the time when in their old life she would have gotten up to make breakfast. Today, however, Sarah saw no point in getting up. Pine Hollow outside her window was a gray fog, reflecting the emptiness in her soul. The phone was ringing off the hook with Michael's messages. Dozens of unreturned calls, dozens of unread texts. She hadn't answered a single one. Instead, Sarah opened her laptop and began searching for information on divorce proceedings in their state. The screen flickered in the semi-dark room, casting a bluish light on her haggard face. Divorce due to adultery, property division, collection of evidence. These phrases now made up the vocabulary of her new reality. Sarah methodically made notes in her notebook, highlighting the important points. She needed proof, indisputable facts of Michael's double life. Photographs, maybe financial documents, something that couldn't be denied or explained away. Sarah called the bookstore and told them she was sick. Mrs. Pettigrew, the elderly owner, didn't ask too many questions. Another advantage of a small town where people respect other people's boundaries. Sarah had a plan. She was going to visit that same pale blue cottage and talk to Lauren Bennett. The decision came to her at dawn, after a sleepless night. Sarah needed to see this woman face to face, to hear her side of the story. Perhaps Lauren knew of Sarah's existence and was as deceitful as Michael. Or, which seemed more likely, she was another victim of his deception. Either way, Sarah wanted to know the truth. The whole truth, unabridged and unmitigated. Oak Ridge greeted her with drizzling rain and the dim light of street lamps, lit despite the daylight hours. Sarah found the house she wanted easily. It was imprinted in her memory, like a brand on her skin. Parking on the opposite side of the street, she sat motionless for a few minutes, gathering her wits. What would she say to this woman? How would she explain her appearance? And what if Michael was there now? But Michael's car was nowhere to be seen, and that gave Sarah resolve. She crossed the street and knocked on the door before fear could paralyze her. The door opened almost immediately. On the doorstep stood the blonde from the supermarket, Lauren Bennett. Up close, she looked younger than Sarah had realized at first, maybe 32 or 33 years old. She was frail, with big blue eyes and a scattering of freckles on her nose, dressed in simple jeans and a loose sweater, her hair in a casual bun. Lauren gave Sarah a questioning look. "Can I help you?" Her voice was soft, with a slight southern accent. Sarah felt something inside her clench. This woman didn't look like the villain who had ruined her marriage. She seemed ordinary, as deluded as Sarah herself. "My name is Sarah Foster," she said, surprised at the calmness in her own voice. "I'm Michael's wife." Lauren blinked, not understanding. Then her eyes widened and she turned pale so rapidly that Sarah feared the woman would faint. "A wife?" whispered Lauren. "Michael isn't married. He's—" She paused, as if seeing something in Sarah's eyes. "Oh my God. Oh my God." Lauren retreated inside the house, and Sarah followed her, closing the door. They found themselves in a small, cozy living room with a couch piled with stuffed toys and shelves full of children's books and pictures. "Who are you?" Lauren asked, finding her voice. Her hands were shaking, and she clasped them in front of her as if in prayer. "I already told you. I'm Michael Foster's wife. We've been married 12 years. We live in Pine Hollow." "No." Lauren shook her head. "No, there must be some mistake. Michael's not married. We've been together 8 years. We have a daughter." "I know," Sarah said quietly. "Her name is Amanda. She's 6 years old. I saw you at the supermarket this week, and I saw Michael come in here, using the key, having dinner with you." Lauren collapsed onto the couch as if her legs could no longer hold her body weight. Her face contorted in a grimace of pain so genuine that Sarah felt a strange rush of sympathy. "He said he works at Pine Hollow," Lauren whispered. "That he rented a room there because he often had to stay late. Said it was just temporary until we could afford a bigger house. I never thought—" Her eyes filled with tears, and Sarah felt her own eyes moisten. They sat across from each other, two women whose lives had been ruined by the same man. "Where's Amanda?" Sarah asked, suddenly realizing that the house was too quiet for the presence of a 6-year-old. "At my mom's," Lauren answered. "She takes her on Sundays so that Michael and I can—" She trailed off, and a new wave of pain contorted her face. God, how could I have been so blind? Sarah knew the feeling all too well. It was the same thing she asked herself on sleepless nights. How could she not see the signs? How could she believe every word he said? "Did you say 8 years?" Sarah asked. "How did you two meet?" Lauren nodded, wiping away her tears. "He worked at a car repair shop here in Oak Ridge. My car broke down, he helped. We started dating." She swallowed. "A year later, I got pregnant. Michael was happy. He said he'd always wanted a family." Every word was a knife in Sarah's heart. She and Michael had talked about kids too, but they'd always put it off. First because of finances, then because of what? Now Sarah understood. Michael didn't want children with her because he already had a daughter, with another woman. "And then?" Sarah asked, though each new piece of the story hurt. "Then he said he'd found a good job in Pine Hollow, that he would drive there and back all the time. Stay overnight because there was a lot of work." Lauren's voice shook. "I never doubted it. He'd always call, always be with us on weekends. He sent money regularly. I thought he just needed time, that soon we'd be together all the time." Sarah was having trouble breathing. All the pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. Michael had been living on 2 families all these years, dividing himself between Pine Hollow and Oak Ridge, between Sarah and Lauren, between 2 lives that should never have crossed paths. "What are we going to do now?" Lauren asked, a childlike bewilderment in her voice, as if she couldn't believe the world could be so cruel. Sarah didn't know the answer. She had come here looking for the truth, and now that she had gotten it, the truth was more bitter than she could have imagined. They talked for over an hour, comparing the details of their lives, finding coincidences that once seemed coincidental, but now took on an ominous meaning. Michael's business trips always fell on the same dates. His emergency calls happened at the same time, when he switched between his families. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of a car stopping in front of the house. Both women froze, looking at each other with sudden understanding. "It's him," Lauren whispered. "It's Sunday. He always arrives at 2 o'clock. Sarah felt her heart hammering somewhere in her throat. She hadn't planned to meet Michael here. Not tonight. But maybe it was for the best. Let him see them together. Let him realize his lies had been fully exposed. The door opened and Michael walked in, holding a bouquet of flowers and a toy bear. His smile faded when he saw the 2 women sitting in the living room. The flowers fell out of his hands. "Sarah?" His voice was barely audible. "What are you—" "Hello, Michael," Sarah said calmly. "Lauren and I had just met. We have a lot in common." Michael looked from one woman to the other, his face contorted with horror and shame. "I can explain," he began, but Lauren cut him off. "Explain what, Michael? That you're married?" That you've been lying to me all these years? That our daughter is growing up with a father who lives a double life? It's not true. Michael stepped forward, but stopped when both women instinctively recoiled. I mean, I didn't mean for it to happen. I just didn't know how to get out of it. Out of what situation? Sarah asked, her voice ringing with anger. The situation where you decided to start a second family without breaking up with the first? When you decided you could play God by dividing your time between us? When you lied to both of us year after year? Michael slumped in his chair, his shoulders slumped. In that moment, he seemed small, pathetic, not at all like the confident man both women had known. I love you both, he said quietly. In different ways, but I love you both. I didn't want to hurt either of you. And how did you envision the ending of this story? Lauren asked, bitterness in her voice. That you would be torn between us forever? That Amanda would never know the truth about her father? Michael was silent, and that silence was more eloquent than any words. He really wasn't thinking about the future. He was living in the moment, balancing between two worlds, hoping that the balance would never be broken. I'm filing for divorce, Sarah said, standing up. And I think Lauren deserves better than you, too. No! Michael jumped up, his face contorted with panic. No, wait, we can work this out. I'll find a way. I'll fix it. How? Lauren asked. How will you fix it, Michael? Will you give us back the years we've spent lying? Will you explain to Amanda why her father is a liar and a cheat? Michael clutched his head. I don't know. I don't know, damn it. But I can't lose you. None of you. And Amanda. God, Amanda. She won't find out from me, Sarah said, surprised at herself. I won't tell her who you really are. That will be your responsibility when the time comes. Lauren looked at her gratefully, and in that moment there was an understanding between the women. They were both victims, but they would not allow themselves to become enemies. Their anger was directed at the man who had betrayed them both. Go away, Lauren said, turning to Michael. I don't want to see you when Amanda gets back. I need time. We both need time. Lauren, please! Michael's voice sounded desperate. Don't do this. Don't push me away. You pushed yourself away, she replied. With every lie, every deception. Now get out before I say something I'll regret. Michael shifted his gaze to Sarah, as if looking to her for an ally, but she looked at him with such coldness that he backed away. I'll be back, he said, heading for the door. We'll talk when you both calm down. I'll explain everything. I'll make things right. The door closed behind him, and the women heard the sound of a car pulling away. The silence that hung in the room was heavy with unspoken words and repressed emotions. What are we going to do? Lauren asked, and there was so much helplessness in her voice that Sarah's heart squeezed with sympathy. Move on, Sarah answered. One without him, one without him, one without him, whatever you decide. But he must answer for his lies. Something flashed in Lauren's eyes that Sarah couldn't decipher. Fear? Determination? Desperation? You're right, Lauren said. He has to answer. The next few days passed like a blur. Sarah consulted with a lawyer, gathered divorce papers, changed the locks on the house. All the while, Michael called and texted her, begging for a meeting, for a chance to explain himself. She ignored him. Lauren hadn't heard from him, and Sarah hadn't sought contact. What else could they say to each other? All they had in common was the pain of being betrayed by the same man. Thursday night, as Sarah was sorting through Michael's things, deciding to put them out on the porch, the phone rang. Emma's name popped up on the screen. Did you hear that? Emma's voice was strained, which didn't bode well. About what? Lauren Bennett, the woman from Oak Ridge. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. What about her? She's dead, Sarah. They found her in her house this morning. The police say murder. The world spun around Sarah and she slumped into a chair to keep from falling. Lauren is dead? But how? Why? What happened? She asked, barely recognizing her own voice. A neighbor had come by to check on her. The door was unlocked. She found Lauren in the living room. The police aren't giving details, but they say it's clearly a homicide. Sarah closed her eyes, remembering the pale blue house, the cozy living room littered with toys, and the fragile blonde with a scattering of freckles on her nose. Lauren, who didn't deserve Michael's lies or this horrible death. And Amanda? Sarah asked, suddenly remembering the girl. She was at her grandmother's. Thank goodness she didn't see... Emma paused. Sarah, the police are looking for Michael. He's the prime suspect. Do you know where he is? Sarah shook her head, though Emma couldn't see it. No, I haven't spoken to him since Sunday, then we both kicked him out of Lauren's house. Both of you? Sarah briefly told Emma about her meeting with Lauren, Michael's appearance, their joint decision to distance themselves from him. God, Sarah, Emma exhaled. You're in danger. If Michael killed Lauren... We don't know it was him, Sarah interrupted her, though deep down, fear was already taking root. The Michael she knew wasn't capable of murder, but did she know the real Michael? Or just the mask he'd worn all these years? Either way, you'd better be careful, Emma said. Lock the doors and call me if he shows up. Sarah promised and hung up. The house was suddenly too quiet, too dark. Every shadow seemed threatening, every creak of the floorboards a warning. She went to the window, gazing out into the twilight of Pine Hollow. Somewhere out there, in the darkness, was Michael, the man she'd lived with for 12 years, the man who had turned out to be a stranger, a man who might have killed the mother of her child. A chill ran down her spine at the thought of what he could do to her. Lauren Bennett didn't know that this night could be her last. After Michael and Sarah left, she sat in the silence of her small home, contemplating how her life had been reduced to rubble in a matter of hours. 8 years of lies, 8 years of believing that Michael loved her, that they were building a future together. And now, what will she tell Amanda? How will she explain to a 6-year-old that her father is a liar, that he has another life, another woman? The doorbell rang at 8 p.m. sharp. Lauren wasn't expecting company. Her mother wasn't due to bring Amanda over until tomorrow afternoon. Could it be Michael? Back to beg for forgiveness again? She opened the door and froze, looking at her visitor. What are you doing here? Lauren asked, instinctively stepping back. To talk, replied the visitor, entering the house and closing the door behind him. You and I have an unfinished conversation. Lauren retreated further until her back was against the living room wall. She could feel her heart pounding, her skin growing cold with fear. We have nothing to talk about, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Go away, please. I don't want any trouble. There's already trouble. The guest's voice was a strange mixture of bitterness and determination. And you're part of it. Lauren saw the glint of metal in the visitor's hand. A knife. An ordinary kitchen knife, the kind you'd find thousands of in any household. But at that moment, it looked deadly. Look, Lauren raised her hands in a protective gesture. We can work this out peacefully. I'm not going to come between you two. I just want to live my life. Raise Amanda. Amanda? Something trembled in the guest's voice. What's going to happen to her? She'll be fine, Lauren said quickly, clutching at the subject like it was a lifeline. She's a strong girl. She'll get through this. We all will. For a moment, Lauren thought her words had hit the mark. The hand with the knife lowered, a flicker of doubt in her guest's eyes. But then his expression changed, hard and determined. No, we won't. Not after what happened. Lauren wanted to scream, but fear paralyzed her vocal cords. She watched the hand with the knife rise and thought of her daughter, about how she would never again see Amanda open Christmas presents, hear her laughter, feel a warm hug. The first blow came in her chest, robbing her of breath. The second hit her stomach. The third hit her chest again. Lauren felt no pain, only shock and cold. She sank to the floor, looking into the eyes of her killer, seeing there a reflection of her own horror. Lauren Bennett's last thought was a prayer that her daughter would never know the horror that had taken place in that house, that Amanda would remember only love and happiness, not blood and betrayal. Then darkness fell, and Lauren Bennett ceased to exist in the world that had treated her so cruelly. The killer stood over the body, watching the dark stain on the carpet blur. The deed had been done. There was no turning back. Now all that was left to do was wait for the truth to surface, as drowned bodies always do, despite all efforts to hide them in the depths. Detective Ray Tucker rubbed his inflamed eyes and took another sip of cold coffee. The clock on the wall of the Pine Hollow police station showed the beginning of 7 in the morning. But for him, the day had started much earlier, at 3:30, with a phone call from neighboring Oak Ridge. A homicide, young woman, stab wounds. The neighboring county was asking for help, and Tucker, the only detective in all of Pine Hollow with a population of 2,000, couldn't say no. Now the crime scene photos lay before him, and the image of Lauren Bennett lying in a pool of her own blood in her cozy living room haunted him every time he closed his eyes. The medical examiner had counted 7 stab wounds, an excessive number for a routine robbery or random attack. This was personal. Someone wanted Lauren Bennett dead very badly. In his 49 years, Tucker had seen enough to know that in cases like this, the circle of suspects was usually limited to the victim's loved ones. Husband, boyfriend, lover. Except that Lauren Bennett, as it turned out, had neither a husband nor an official boyfriend. There was only a 6-year-old daughter, Amanda, and the vague figure of the child's father, of whom the neighbors knew only the name Michael. Something was bugging Tucker, some vague memory associated with that name. In a small town like Pine Hollow, the detective knew almost all the residents, and the name Michael combined with an automobile repair shop evoked a certain association. "Michael Foster," he muttered, and a sudden realization made him straighten in his chair. Damn Michael Foster. Tucker quickly dialed the Oak Ridge Sheriff's number. "Bill? It's Ray. Bennett's murder. This Michael, the father of her baby. Did you find out his full name yet? Foster? Yeah, that's what I thought. Listen, we got a Michael Foster in Pine Hollow. Works at Jenkins' auto shop. Married to a woman named Sarah, works at the bookstore. Nice guy, no trouble with the law. Yeah, I'll check it out. I'll be in touch." Tucker hung up the phone and leaned back in his chair, digesting the information. Michael Foster, quiet, hard-working guy, model family man. And the father of the child of a murdered woman from a neighboring town? Coincidence? Tucker didn't believe in coincidences. 30 years on the force had taught him that coincidences were just connections that hadn't been made yet. It was time to pay the Fosters a visit. The Fosters' house was typical Pine Hollow, small but well kept, with a neat lawn and a bed of late fall flowers. Tucker knocked, expecting to see Michael or Sarah, but the door remained closed. Knocking again and getting no answer, he decided to start with the machine shop. Old Jenkins was wiping down tools when the detective entered the garage. "Ray, what are you doing here? Your pickup looks okay." "I'm not looking for the car, Frank. I'm looking for Michael Foster." Jenkins's face changed, became wary. "Michael? He hasn't shown up in 3 days. Said he had a family emergency, took some time off. What happened?" Tucker tapped his fingers thoughtfully on the counter. "Know anything about his Oak Ridge connections?" Jenkins shrugged. "Drives up there, says he's moonlighting. I don't mind as long as he does his job here, and Michael's a great mechanic." "What about your personal life? Any problems with Sarah?" "Look, Ray, I don't gossip about my employees," Jenkins frowned. "But to be honest, I've never noticed any problems. Just a normal family, quiet, hardworking. Michael talked about kids sometimes, but they didn't seem to work out." Tucker nodded, making a mental note. "Kids," another thread. "Thanks, Frank. If Michael shows up, tell him I'm looking for him. It's important." The next stop was the Pages of the Past bookstore where Sarah Foster worked. He found her behind the counter helping a customer select a gift for her grandson. Tucker waited patiently, watching her. Pale, with dark circles under her eyes, she moved as if in a dream. She clearly hadn't slept well in days. When the customer left, Tucker approached the counter. "Mrs. Foster? Detective Ray Tucker. Can I ask you a few questions?" Sarah tensed, her hands going through the books. "About what?" "About your husband, Michael, and about a woman named Lauren Bennett from Oak Ridge." Sarah's face turned even paler, if that was possible. She glanced at the shopkeeper and said quietly, "Not here. I finish in an hour. We can talk at my place." Tucker nodded. Sarah's reaction spoke volumes. She knew about Lauren Bennett. The only question was how well and what else she knew. The Foster house inside looked like a small hurricane had blown through it. Boxes of belongings, half-packed bags, signs of recent conflict. Sarah led Tucker into the kitchen and silently poured herself some water. "Do you know Lauren Bennett is dead?" Tucker asked bluntly, watching her reaction. "Yes," Sarah answered quietly. "I got a call from a friend, yesterday." And you knew her personally? Sarah took a sip of water, as if gathering her strength. I met her on Sunday. I went over to her house to, sort it out. Sort it out? That my husband of 12 years was leading a double life. Sarah grinned bitterly. He had a second family in Oak Ridge, Lauren and their daughter Amanda. Tucker listened intently, taking notes as Sarah recounted her discovery at the supermarket, her surveillance of her husband, her decision to talk to Lauren, Michael's arrival during their conversation, and both women's decision to stay away from him. And where is your husband now, Mrs. Foster? I don't know. Sarah shook her head. I haven't seen him since. He's called and written, but I haven't answered. I've been changing the locks, getting ready to file for divorce. Tucker watched Sarah with growing suspicion. The story was too perfect. Cheating wife learns of her husband's betrayal, dates another woman. Then that woman turns up murdered. Classic motive, jealousy, revenge, anger. Mrs. Foster, where were you Wednesday night between 7 and 9? Sarah's eyes widened in realization. Do you think I was? No. I was at home, on the phone with my divorce lawyer, then Emma, my friend. She can confirm. We'll check it out, Tucker nodded. And your husband? Do you have any idea where he might be right now? He had a friend in Portland. Maybe he's there. Or... She stopped. Or... He has a hunting cabin. It's near Oak Ridge in the woods. He used to go there sometimes on weekends. Said he was hunting. What's the address? It's just a cabin in the woods, no address, but I can show you on a map. After Tucker left, Sarah stood at the window for a long time, looking out at the street. Thoughts swirled in her head like fall leaves in the wind. Did the police really suspect her? After all, she had a motive: jealousy, anger, the pain of betrayal. But she hadn't killed Lauren. She even almost sympathized with that woman who had turned out to be as much a victim of lies as herself. Something told Sarah that the truth would be far worse than she'd imagined. The next few days passed like a blur for Sarah. The police questioned her twice more. The alibi was verified but doubtful. The phone conversation with her friend proved only that she had been home at about 8 o'clock in the evening. Before and after that would be plenty of time to drive to Oak Ridge and back. Michael was nowhere to be found. A search of the hunting cabin was fruitless. It was empty, though signs of someone having been there recently were obvious. Tucker was inclined to think that Michael had simply run away after realizing that his double life had been exposed. Emma Harris, Sarah's best friend, stood behind her. "This is absurd," she said as she paced the living room of the Foster house. "How can they suspect you? Michael had a lot more reasons to get rid of Lauren." "Like what?" Sarah asked tiredly. "He apparently loved her. They had a child together." "Exactly!" Emma exclaimed. "He didn't want to choose between you. He didn't want to pay child support, split the estate. It was easier to just, eliminate the problem." Sarah shook her head. As angry as she was at Michael, she couldn't imagine him as a murderer. In 12 years of marriage, he had never shown any aggression. Even on their last meeting, when both women had vented their anger on him, he had looked depressed, confused, but not angry. "I don't know, Emma. I just don't know what to think." Emma sat down beside her, took her hand. "Look, whatever happens, I'm here for you. We'll get through this together." Sarah squeezed her hand gratefully. What would she do without Emma all these days? Without her support, without her shoulder to cry on, without her practical advice? "Thank you," Sarah whispered, "for everything." On the 5th day after the murder, Tucker showed up at Sarah's door, accompanied by 2 sheriff's deputies. His face was impenetrable, which was more frightening than open hostility. "Sarah Foster, you need to come down to the station with us," he said without preamble. "Why?" "I've already answered all your questions. We have new information and new evidence." On the way to the station, Tucker was silent, and that silence was more eloquent than any words. Sarah felt the fear growing inside her like a wave ready to overwhelm her consciousness. In the interrogation room, Tucker placed several photographs in front of her. "Do you recognize these clothes?" Sarah looked at the pictures and went cold. It was her jacket, the same one that had gone missing a few days ago, and it had dark stains on it that could only be blood. "It's my jacket," she whispered. "But I don't know how the blood got on it, and I haven't seen it since last week." "We found it this morning," Tucker said, "in the dumpster behind your friend Emma Harris's hair salon, along with a knife with traces of Lauren Bennett's blood on it." Sarah felt the room spinning around her. There must be some mistake. I didn't kill Lauren. And Emma wouldn't do that to me. Mrs. Harris claims you came to her Wednesday night very upset, said you were at Lauren's, that there'd been an argument, asked you to get rid of the jacket and the knife. What? Sarah couldn't believe her ears. That's a lie. I wasn't at Lauren's on Wednesday. I was at home, calling Emma on the phone, not visiting her. Tucker looked at her with an unreadable expression on his face. "We have a search warrant for your home, Mrs. Foster. There's a task force working there right now. If we find any more evidence—" "You won't, because there isn't any," Sarah exclaimed. "I didn't kill Lauren." "Then explain how your jacket ended up in the victim's blood. And why does your best friend claim that you asked her to get rid of the evidence?" Sarah shook her head, unable to comprehend what was going on. Why had Emma lied? Why set her up? "I don't know. I don't understand anything." At that moment, the interrogation room door opened and a young deputy walked in, whispering something in Tucker's ear. The detective's face changed. He nodded and turned to Sarah. "Wait right here, Mrs. Foster. I'll be right back." Sarah was left alone, feeling panic rising inside her. What was going on? Why had her best friend lied to the police? Or, no, it couldn't be true. Emma couldn't have wanted to hurt her, not after all these years of friendship. The time dragged on endlessly. Sarah didn't know how long she sat in the interrogation room. An hour, 2, 3. Finally, the door opened again and Tucker entered. His face was strangely pensive. "Mrs. Foster, you're free to go." "What?" Sarah couldn't believe her ears. "New circumstances," Tucker explained briefly. "We've discovered your husband, Michael Foster." "Michael? Where is he? Is he all right?" Tucker paused as if searching for words. "He killed himself, Mrs. Foster. We found him in a motel on the outskirts of Portland. Left a note, a full confession." Sarah felt the ground slipping away from under her feet. "Michael's dead? He can't be. This is some kind of mistake, a dream, a nightmare. Yeah, I don't understand." In the note, he confessed to killing Lauren Bennett. Said he couldn't bear the thought of losing the 2 women he loved. When Lauren demanded that he make a choice, he, snapped. Sarah sat motionless, trying to comprehend what she'd heard. Michael. The quiet, calm Michael had killed the mother of his child in a fit of rage or desperation, and then killed himself, unable to live with the burden. What about the jacket and the knife and Emma's testimony? It was a bluff to get you to confess, sorry. In a hotel room on the outskirts of Portland, Michael Foster took one last look at the note he was about to leave. A confession of murder, an explanation of his motives, a plea for forgiveness he didn't deserve. It was the right thing to do. The only thing he could do after ruining the lives of 2 women he supposedly loved. After taking the life of Lauren, the mother of his child, in a fit of impotent rage. After seeing the horror and disgust in Sarah's eyes when she learned the truth about his double life. He deserved neither forgiveness nor understanding, only oblivion. And perhaps the memory of him as a man who had at least found the courage to admit his guilt at the end. Michael placed the note on the table, next to Amanda's picture. His daughter would never know what a monster her father had been. She'll be told he died of an accident or illness, and that would be the best gift he could leave her, not knowing the whole truth. He picked up the gun he'd bought 2 days ago from a suspicious-looking guy at the gas station. The metal was cold and heavy in his hand. Strangely, there was no fear, only fatigue and a desire for it to be over. Michael put the gun to his temple and closed his eyes. His last thought was of Sarah not as he had last seen her, with her face contorted with pain and anger, but as young, laughing, hopeful as she had been when they had first met. Before he had ruined everything with his lies and weakness. The gunshot sounded unexpectedly loud in the silence of the empty room.